It is just before dawn, and the slow-rolling surf slides gently back and forth along the sandy shores of the North Carolina coast. A soft red glow slowly appears in the eastern sky, fading away the stars of the night. Low clouds form quickly, and then suddenly the morning sky explodes like a kaleidoscope of brilliant colors. A new day is born. The rays from the sun pierce the many patterned clouds, races over the coastal plains, on across the Carolina sandhills, and then strikes the peaks of a range of low-rolling mountains in Montgomery County near the center of the state. A chill autumn fog hovers above the warm waters of Baden Lake, but the warmth of the sun rapidly drives the fog away, revealing more of the low-rolling mountains in the background. These mountains are not the foothills of the famous Blue Ridge Mountains farther to the west. These are the ancient Uwharries, a range of mountains that have seen more sunrises and sunsets than the human mind can even imagine. The man-made lakes here in the center of the Uwharries occur along the bed of the Yadkin River. The Yadkin begins on the eastern slope of the Blue Ridge Mountains. At a point near Morrow Mountain, the Yadkin River is joined by the Uwharrie River, and from this intersection, the Yadkin and Uwharrie Rivers end, and the Petey River begins, flowing on into the Atlantic Ocean from the South Carolina coast near Georgetown. There is very little written history about the Uwharries before the past couple hundred years when the first settlers arrived. Much can be determined, however, by taking a close look at its geology and by digging into the archaeological remains of the ancient civilizations that inhabited this area centuries before the arrival of Columbus to the new America. A fleeting glance at the rolling hills and hummocks of these ancient Uwharrie Mountains reveals very little about its origins. Examination of the rock formations, however, begin to uncover a lot of its hidden secrets and tell many fascinating stories about its past. A North Carolina geologic map names a large portion of this area as the Carolina Slate Belt. This slate belt actually runs all of the way from Virginia into Georgia. Erosion over millions of years has exposed part of this formation to the surface, and it can now be seen all along Slate Mine Road off Highway 49, about 10 miles east of Richfield. Jacobs Creek Flagstone Company operates a mine and processing plant here, shipping this beautiful blue slate, referred to as North Carolina Bluestone, all over the country. This slate formation tells part of the story of a dramatic sequence of events that began here well over 500 million years ago. As the earth began to rumble and swell, giant volcanic eruptions occurred that deposited tremendous layers of volcanic ash all over the region. Over eons of time, the ash turned first into shale and then altered into slate. A large body of tranquil water had to exist where the slate formed. There are practically no indications of fossils in this slate, as only the more simple forms of single-cell life were being developed in the waters of the earth during that time. The earth was still barren, as no vegetation had yet developed. A great period of time had to pass before the arrival of tiny multicellular life, such as the trilobites, as seen here. These fossil specimens are from Millard County, Utah, and are around 500 million years old. They were the largest form of animals on Earth during that time. The Carolina slate beds were already millions of years old when these trilobites appeared on Earth. Although most geologists attribute the creation of the major formations of the Uwharrie Mountains to this half-billion-year-old period of volcanic activity, some believe that the original Uwharries may have been much, much older. All agree that they are certainly some of the oldest mountains in the world. Some also think that these mountains at one time could have been as high as the Rocky Mountains and have eroded bit by bit until only a few more dramatic elevations remain, such as that at Morrow Mountain. Evidence of this long period of erosion can be found in the giant sand and water-worn gravel deposits now mined extensively in a large area near Lyellsville, North Carolina. That area is believed to be an outwashed plain at the foot of the old Uwharries. Can we surmise, then, that the remaining mountains seen here today are just remnants of once towering giants? Just as the rock formations tell much about the geological history of the area, artifacts uncovered at 3 major Uwharrie sites reveal many of the secrets of the Indians that inhabited this region in the centuries gone by. As the Yadkin River provided a great source of food and water, it is now known that various Indian cultures lived here almost continuously from as far back as 12,000 years ago and on up until the middle 1800s. As late as 1824, bands of 10 or more Indians were frequently encountered on their way to Fayetteville, North Carolina, a major trade center during that period of time. It was reported that many of these groups, eager for a reward, displayed their hunting skills with bows and arrows by hitting coins tossed into the air. The Indians of this region were classified into a major language group known as the Eastern Siouan. Many subcultures of these Sioux Indians were given names relating to important people and places around this area, as shown on this chart. Each of these subcultures is listed along with the approximate time that they inhabited this region. The first archaeological work began in this area in 1936 with excavations and explorations at the 18th century Indian town of Keowee in Randolph County. In 1937, archaeological work began at the historic Temple Mound site along the Little River near Mount Gilead in Montgomery County. This area has been accurately restored and now features an outstanding small museum that displays artifacts and history of the Indians that lived here. Originally occupied by the Eastern Sioux, Indians from the Creek Nations in Alabama and Georgia migrated into this area around 1450 A.D., driving the Sioux away. They built a ceremonial mound and temple surrounded by a stockade. Their homes were outside the stockade. 100 years later, descendants of the Sioux returned and drove the Creek Indians away. Various excavations continued in this area, but stopped around 1942 with the onslaught of World War II. When archaeological work resumed in 1948, studies were made at over 100 sites. During that same year, Dr. Geoffrey Coe, director of the Research Laboratories of Anthropology at the University of North Carolina, and Paul Strife, a graduate student at the University of Michigan, began an archaeological survey of the Morrow Mountain region. The first site examined was at the previous location of the old Loudo's Ferry near Morrow Mountain, where the Uwharrie River joins the Yadkin. 15 test pits were dug here that revealed for the first time in the Carolina Piedmont that different stratigraphic levels of sediments would prove the existence of distinct and different Indian cultures. Carbon-14 measurements of the biological debris left in each level could be used to date each period of occupation. The next major excavation was at the Dershuk site, located on the eastern bank of the Yadkin River, a few hundred yards below the Falls Dam. This site was named in honor of Mr. H.M. Dershuk, formerly of Baden, who from 1927 until 1952 located most of the known Indian occupational sites in the Uwharrie area. Around 7,000 artifacts were collected at this site, including over 2,000 pottery shards. It was proven that Indians inhabited this area as far back as 5000 BC. The most extensive archaeological work in this area occurred at the nearby Hardaway site, located on the western shore of a channel on Baden Lake that leads down to the Narrows Dam. The Research Laboratories of Anthropology now houses over 22,000 cataloged artifacts from this site. The oldest Indian culture discovered here dated back to 10,000 BC, or around 12,000 years ago. These ancient inhabitants were named the Hardaway culture after the Hardaway Construction Company that occupied this site during the construction of the Narrows Dam. This archaeological site is now a registered National Historical Landmark and is off limits to random visitors. Although the Uwaras extend into several surrounding counties, the original Montgomery County was considered the heart of the Uwaras. In reality, this entire region was once a part of Anson County, which when established around 1749, extended from Bladen County all of the way west to the Mississippi River. It is amazing to think that the state of Tennessee was once a part of Anson County. Rowan County was cut out of Anson in 1753, Mecklenburg in 1762, and both Montgomery and Richmond County in 1779. The giant Montgomery County was divided along the line of the Yadkin River in 1841 to create Stanley County to the west. The family names of some of the earliest settlers to this area can be found on a Montgomery County historical map. William Russell is shown as a settler here around 1780 and tied to a Russell gold mine near the present town of El Dorado. Trying to correlate some of these early family names to old grave markers in the area can be a rewarding experience for history buffs. It gives one somewhat of a personal connection and a broader insight into the lives of these early inhabitants. An old grave site found in the deep woods near the Baden Shores Resort on Upper Baden Lake ties in the Russell name with a historical map. There are around 30 to 40 graves at this location, most of which are identified with an unmarked plate of slate. Some have a simple identifying mark scratched into the stone for recognition, perhaps made by someone who could neither read nor write very well. The only fully identified grave here was made of marble and lists the name of Mary Ann Russell, born in 1836, died in 1873, and the wife of a W.H. Russell. Her birth date of 1836 seems a little late to tie in with the 1780 date of William Russell as shown on the historical map. Could this W.H. Russell have been the son of the original William Russell? A search of old records will now begin. As you stand here in the quietness of these woods and look upon these old grave markers, your mind tries to create a vision of the past. What were these people really like? What kind of lives did they live? You can almost sense their presence as your mind continues to ponder these questions. There were some Indians still living in this area during those times, even though their numbers had been greatly diminished due to their lack of immunity to the white man's diseases. Were their coexistences friendly? As you explore the surrounding area, you find the remains of an old chimney in the woods nearby. Could this have been the home of the Russells? Your mind again tries to restore more visions of the past. You see a simple log home with a crackling fire to ward off the chills of winter. A pot of boiling stew hanging in the center of the fireplace, with perhaps a piece of bread baking on the warm hearth. These people most certainly had to be self-sufficient, depending upon their farming and hunting of wild game for survival. Surely these people must have placed all of their faith in God to sustain them when shadows of darkness crept into their lives. This becomes quite evident when you begin to discover some of the old churches that spread across the countryside here. This Lanes Creek Methodist Church stands at its original site near the entrance to Uwharrie Point on Upper Baden Lake. It was established in the 1700s. Some of the grave markers here also date births back to the 1700s. Many here are unmarked, but some reveal the artistic skills of some of these people by the decorative marks inscribed with a simple pointed hand tool or nail. Later markers are of granite or marble, and some reveal much about their hardships and sufferings. This family lost most of their children within the first few years of their birth. Typhoid epidemics ran rampant here during the turn of the century. The old Southern tradition of dinner on the ground has been an important social event for churches for centuries. Most churches in this area have a permanent place for this major gathering. Other area churches with their adjoining grave sites and markers give a beckoning call to continue your exploration of the history of these early inhabitants. An old gravesite on the edge of the Tuckertown Reservoir that was once the Yadkin River channel has markers dating back to the 1700s. Unfortunately, many of the markers have been destroyed by some uncaring young scoundrels. You question what pleasure they could possibly have in destroying part of their own history, their own heritage. The eventual major progress in the Uwaris can be traced back to a visit by an early British historian, William Winterbottom. In 1796, he wrote about the narrowest channel on the Yadkin River at the current site of Baden Lake. He told of its powerful rushing waters in which shad were being caught in great abundance with circular nets. He said that there was perhaps not a more desirable place in the United States for locating a large industrial town. It was not until 1898, however, when Egbert Hambley, an English mining engineer, first proposed the development of the Narrows. Hambley was well known for his ability to attract investors. With $5 million he had raised in capital stock and $2.5 million in bonds, he organized the North Carolina Power Company in 1899. At the same time, he engaged the interest of George I. Whitney, director of the Union Transfer and Trust Company of Pittsburgh. That same year, Whitney bought the controlling interest in Hambley's Power Company and formed the Whitney Development Company. He expanded rapidly into many business ventures, including a reduction mill at the Gold Hill Mines, Rowan Granite Works that later became Granite Quarry, Barringer Gold Mines in Stanley County, Yadkin River Power Company, and many others. Whitney's plans for a hydroelectric dam on the Narrows included a granite structure 35 feet high and 1,100 feet long at a site that now runs parallel to the old Winston-Salem southbound trestle on Upper Baden Lake. The top of the old dam is now just slightly submerged below the top of the water and marked by danger buoys. A severe drought in the early 1950s lowered the water level on Baden Lake to an almost unbelievable level, exposing this remarkable construction that had remained unseen for almost a half century. Whitney also began construction of a 5-mile canal to a main power plant just below Palmer Mountain. Evidence of this canal can still be seen today alongside the town of Palmerville. Near the dam, his engineers planned to build a major industrial town named Whitney and drew out plans for streets and boulevards. An unusual series of events, including the premature death of his partner Hambley from a typhoid epidemic and the forced sale of some of his coal mining stocks, led Whitney into bankruptcy in 1907 before the town of Whitney could be built. In 1912, a French subsidiary called Southern Aluminum Company purchased the Whitney properties along the Yadkin. They abandoned Whitney's plans and began another ambitious project of a hydroelectric dam and plant farther down the Narrows. They designed a complete town and named it Baden after the company's president, Adrian Baden. They constructed a number of buildings, including machine shops and workers' housing, along with a complete water system for the town. The workers' housing units were called quadruplex structures and were similar to today's townhouses. Many are still in use today. The first phase of construction for the dam began with the bypass tunnels as seen here. With the outbreak of World War I in 1914, however, most of the French engineers were called home and all construction ceased. Alcoa by this time had become the major producer of aluminum in America, and in November of 1915, Alcoa purchased all of the French company's assets. Work began in 1916 to complete the town of Baden and the dam. The results were most impressive. The Greensboro Daily News wrote that the Nares Dam was, quote, the largest undertaking of its kind ever attempted in North Carolina. It is said by many to be one of the finest pieces of construction work in the United States, and so tremendous in appearance, a veritable mountain of concrete, that one is reminded that it has more the appearance of being the handiwork of the supreme architect of the universe than that of human hands. The Nares Dam was the first of four constructed by Alcoa. The Falls Dam was constructed in 1919 at Yadkin Falls, a point below the Nares Dam. The High Rock Dam was completed in 1927 and the Tuckertown Dam in the early 1960s. From the standpoint of both the economy and the recreation in the Uares, Alcoa has been a godsend. They have provided the region with over 23,000 reservoir acres, with some of the best fishing, boating, and other recreational opportunities in the state. Baden Lake has a shoreline of over 100 miles, and High Rock Lake, north of Baden Lake, has a shoreline of well over 200 miles. Although not a part of Alcoa's properties, Lake Tillery lies south of Baden Lake and is another important recreational area for the Uares. Fortunately, Alcoa enforces strict regulations regarding all types of construction and environmental protection along the water shorelines, adding greatly to the pristine beauty of the lakes. A group representing all counties from Rowan to Anson, called the Yadkin and Pee Lakes Project, also works towards the continued growth of this area in the proper and controlled directions. Their stated goals are to promote and support efforts to balance economic development and environmental management within the Yadkin and Pee Lakes region. The Uares was once one of the major gold mining regions in the state. Montgomery County had many operating mines. The towns of Gold Hill and New London were also sites of major gold mines. Near the town of New London, you can still try your hand at gold panning at either the Cotton Patch or Mountain Creek gold mines. The nearby Reed Gold Mine in Cabarrus County is credited with originally bringing gold mining and gold fever to this region. Young Conrad Reed found a 17-pound gold nugget in a creek here in 1799. Today, a modern museum stands on the site of the original gold mine. Many creeks throughout the Uares are still great places in which to pan for that ever-elusive, ever-exciting glimmer of gold. The Uares also had working pyrophyllite and quartz mines in the past, and many beautiful quartz crystals can still be found here. Another interesting variety of crystallized mineral specimens can be found in many sections of the area. They are known as limonite pseudomorphs after pyrite. These were originally formed deep in the Uare Mountains as iron pyrite crystals or fool's gold. Over millions of years, they weathered into an iron oxide called limonite. Early settlers who discovered these perfectly square cubes in their fields thought perhaps that they had been made by the Indians and used as a form of currency. They began to call these Indian money, which has become the common name for these throughout the region. Although most of this area was developed prior to much plant or animal life, isolated pockets of later settlements have preserved some fossil remains. This specimen of phytosaur teeth was found in Montgomery County. These animals, similar to crocodiles, lived here around 180 million years ago. Woolly mammoths roamed here around 20 million years ago, and buffalo in the later years. The buffalo and the Indians are gone, but the beauty of the region remains. Morrow Mountain is one of the major attractions of the area. Although only 936 feet high, the view is quite impressive. The home of Dr. Francis J. Cron has been rebuilt at its original location within the state park grounds. Dr. Cron was a highly respected German immigrant and known for his outstanding medical practice, his public service, and his horticultural pursuits. He mentioned in his writings that from his front porch he could hear the constant roar of the waterfalls that were more than a mile away in the narrowest channel of the Yadkin River. The Falls Dam was later constructed at that site. Morrow Mountain is an ideal place for nature lovers and botanists. There's a great diversity of trees and plants here. Photographers can have a field day here photographing such things as an endless species of mushrooms. The park also provides a variety of camping, hiking, and fishing facilities. Camp Barnhart, north of Baden, provides a similar variety of facilities and programs for scout groups from all over the region. Many other areas offer a great variety of recreational facilities for hiking, camping, boating, fishing, and hunting. The Uwharrie National Forest area, along with many private lands, provide one of the state's major hunting areas for deer and other wild game. The deer population is so great that they can be seen quite often along the roadways and fields. Driving at night through this region should be done with great caution, as many deer are killed by cars here year-round, as evidenced by this car driven by a Baden Shores Resort resident. Fortunately, in this case, the driver was not seriously injured, although the car was a total loss. There are several small but very interesting towns and communities here. The town of Troy, considered the gateway to the Uwharries, is also the county seat for Montgomery County. The old courthouse is shown here as it appeared in the early 1900s. Some of the more recent government office buildings are quite impressive. The Montgomery County Historical Society has converted an old roller mill building into a museum to preserve some of the regional history. Headed north out of Troy on Highway 109, you enter the small community of Uwharrie. The mullah next door is one of the community's gathering places and a major check-in point for the recording of all deer killed by hunters. This highway provides a beautiful view of the Uwharrie Mountains, including a glimpse at the mostly secluded Uwharrie River. The town of El Dorado is next. It has a major gathering place for hunters and fishermen. This town was the home of the once famous Coggins Gold Mine in the days gone by. The town of Denton, still farther north on Highway 109, is the host for an old Thrashers reunion held each summer during the week of July the 4th. It attracts visitors from all over the United States. They come here to see the old restored and operating steam-powered farm machinery and to enjoy all of the related activities, including tractor pulls. The Pine Haven community on Upper Baden Lake is the home of many permanent residents of the area, along with a number of vacation homes for those that can only enjoy the beauty and quietness of this waterside small town on a part-time basis. The nearby Baden Lake General Store is the gathering place for residents all around the Upper Baden Lake region. It is a place to share all of the news of local happenings and to find items for most of their needs. Several resort developments have sprung up around the fabulous lakes in this region. One of the most prestigious of these is the Uwharrie Point development on Baden Lake. This resort provides 24-hour security along with a world-class 18-hole golf course and clubhouse. The golf course has been rated among the top 10 in the nation, designed by Tom Fazio. It affords many other recreational opportunities, such as tennis and water sports.